Okay, good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, and members that are joining us in the gallery. So welcome to our governance and priorities meeting for, December 6th. Can you imagine? Only a few short months ago, we were just talking about that we were celebrating January 1st, 2021, and now we're celebrating the last month of 2021. As time goes by really fast when you're having fun, or when you're getting older like me, you kind of forget some of the days in between the weeks. So hopefully that you're able to remember and enjoy as much as you can. Members of council, there's an agenda before you. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. The Town Council adopted December 6, 2021 Governance and Priorities Meeting Agenda as presented.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, move on to public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to address council on anything that's not on the current agenda. Administration, has anybody registered?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. No, we've had nobody register for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody in the audience like to address council on anything that's not on the current agenda? Okay. Seeing none, move on to presentations and delegations. Today we have three presentations, which is really good. Usually we have one or two, so this is a blessing to us. So thank you very much for everybody taking your time to come out here. First off, we have the Meridian Foundation. Welcome, ladies. Again, if you can come sit down and then speak directly into the mics as you introduce yourselves to members of council and to the gallery, please.
I'll take this off.
So good afternoon, Your Worship, council members and administration. Just wanted to speak to you a little bit about the murals at the Meridian Housing Foundation. So the trio of murals showcasing senior care in the past, present, and future was expected to be done over 3 consecutive years, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Although the last mural was delayed due to the pandemic, but I'm happy to say it was all completed this year in 2021. Just a little history going back. When the decision was made to move forward with this concept of a mural project, the research began to see this become a reality. Meridian Housing Foundation had to receive approval by the Chamber of Commerce. Afterwards, 5 to 6 artists within the mural committee had to approve the mural plans. There was a call sent out to artists for submissions to propose artwork ideas. James McKay was successful in being selected as the artist for the 3 murals. The 3 murals had to be different from other murals that already existed within the community. We chose to highlight senior care and what it meant to the seniors living within Meridian Housing Foundation, the senior care staff, and the families within the community. It really was a fun process from start to finish. Our activities coordinator, Kim Abraham-Schutz, she did a real fantastic job of creating the excitement and gathering the seniors for several afternoons of brainstorming. They really got engaged. Artist James McKay was always present in attendance, and he made sure to capture everything that our residents were expressing. James then left, reviewed what was said, and came back with his ideas of how this could be done onto a mural. He was open to the ideas of having our senior residents involved and agreed to Kim's idea of having the seniors add their brushstroke to all the murals. Each mural offered an afternoon of putting on a smock and participating in painting an area on the mural. The first mural, labeled Pass, was titled Comfort Pass and really depicted the conversations that we had with our seniors. The doctor's house calls, homemade remedies, the Watkins man, and caring for the elderly with a second house on the farmstead. The mural labeled Present was given the title of The Good Life, and really was all about caring for residents, the care that residents receive today, and the advancement of medicine. It spoke of eating healthy and staying active mentally, spiritually, and physically. Our last mural, the mural Future, which was named Shaping the Future, and which was unveiled this year, gives us a look into what the future of senior care might look like in years to come. And this mural captured two perspectives for the future of senior living. First, we look at senior populations in mind in a safe senior community, providing togetherness and comfort. And secondly, we focused on the possible influences of technology, and you'll see for sure a robot in it. I do really want to take the opportunity to say thank you to the town of Stony Plain for their support, and more importantly, to your Cultural and Tourism Development Officer, Chantal Lebege, for all her guidance and just keeping things moving along smoothly. So it really was a great project, so thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, and definitely, previous council had the opportunity to be present at all three unveilings, and again, it was very good to see the seniors being involved and actually their commitment and their excitement of seeing the murals come to life from what they envisioned, what they talked about, and then adding their brushstrokes. So very good. It was great to see that involvement from our seniors. So thank you. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Hansard?
Not really a question, Mr. Mayor, but to Ms. Saint-Laurent. I wanted to say simply that I think it's wonderful that the seniors get involved, and one of the early ones I was able to participate in, and they really do put themselves into it. So I think it's great that keeping in mind who the artist might be, who would actually enjoy that. Some artists prefer to work alone, so that was wonderful. I love the murals. When I pull into Park, I sit and look at them all in the car and then walk around the other side. So it's wonderful that part of town has those murals.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so on behalf of Town Council and our residents, thank you very much for the work and the partnership. It does add some life and viability and vitality to our community. As you know, Stony Plain is the town of the painted past, and this is with your three murals there. It captures the past, the present, and the future, which is just a great way that fits in within the Town of Stony Plain's mural program. So thank you very much. And I believe you have a couple things for us as a picturette. Are you guys going to want to do a picture with the picturettes?
Yep.
Okay. So members of council, if you can come down. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Kim. Okay, members of council, that moves us over to the next agenda item. This is 4.2, which is the presentation of the Poet Laureate. And welcome to Chambers, Lisa.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, administration. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight. Share a piece of poetry with you as I launch into the second term as Poet Laureate for the town of Stony Plain. This poem is entitled "The Lights at Rotary Park." This past fall, I watched the leaves redden here, a glorious display to rival any sunset. I worried in the chill of approaching night and set my pace against the darkness. Geese cannot come soon enough, great heralds of the spring with noisy announcements to arouse the sleepy earth. The earth sleeps now, beneath a crust of long settled snow. I am separated from the memory of grass. The only green is tinsel, wrapped around the lampposts and the handmade wreaths that crown them. These symbols of life and death and hope confuse me. Last year, mid-pandemic, we could not see our families. Christmas came like those ducks on a highway in southern Alberta. I stopped to let them cross, but the solitary oncoming car did not. I thank the gods of every solstice that my daughter's eyes were closed. Today, avoiding traffic, I'm in the park again, worrying again about next year and next year and next year. I look up from my empty coffee cup and see children on the slides. A few seniors are walking their dogs. 2 town employees are checking the bridge for ice. The morning sun casts shorter shadows. The street lamps are still generously lit. Across the field, I see little white light bulbs attached to wire frames in the shape of ducks. A mother and her 3 Christmas babies, large metal bodies still smaller than my 7-year-old's, headed toward the 5th Meridian. These ducks, held tight to the slumbering earth, are safe, and tonight I will bring my children to see the lights. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Beautiful. Again, this is your second appointment as the Poet Laureate. Would you like to kind of expand on that and explain to members of council and the residents what actually is a Poet Laureate and why we have one?
Well, a Poet Laureate is an ambassador for the literary arts. And so my role has been to basically spread the word about poetry and literary culture, and to help poetry and the arts become more accessible to the community. So in my last term, I visited schools, many of them, many classrooms, and we worked on poetry together. And what's impressive about that is that poetry often speaks to those who can't find an outlet in other ways. So it is a great tool for people to share with one another their thoughts and their feelings. And we, as also a part of Parkland Poets, we were out at visiting the seniors at the Meridian Foundation. We have, you may have noticed there was haiku on the sidewalks last year, and all kinds of interesting projects that have given people an outlet and a way to share their deepest emotions and feelings. So that's a big part of what I do.
Thank you. And definitely, speaking to several residents, they definitely appreciated the sidewalk haikus as they walk down across the town of Stony Plain offices as well. And also, you were in the process of writing a haiku once a day or once a week for a booklet.
Yes, I was. So I took on the challenge of writing a haiku a day for my first term, and unfortunately it got abandoned partway through. However, I do plan on meeting my commitment of some, I think, it'll be close to 750. So I will get there. It just, the timing didn't quite work out. So like everything else in the pandemic, I'm claiming that as my excuse for my delay. But at the end of both my terms, those haiku will be written. They are still, the pile is growing.
Well, thank you. And definitely, you know what, many of us as residents of town of Stony Plain see all the physical infrastructure projects of the roads, the parks, the sidewalks, the trails, but we don't see the cultural aspects. And having a poet laureate as part of our cultural master plan and tourism, it does allow us to do that, to focus on that, because we're just more than just about sports or any all that stuff. You know, as a community, we have to focus us as a whole community. So that includes the sports thing, the sports networks, right, the cultural aspects, you know, having good infrastructure and having good administrative staff. You know, that's what creates a community, and definitely appreciate the work that you have done in increasing and enhancing the arts of our community.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Members of council, questions, comments? Councillor Hansard, go ahead.
What a pleasure to have you in council chambers as our poet laureate, and how wonderful it is that we get to keep you another year in that position. First of all, condolences on the passing of your father recently. Sometimes it's hard to get up and keep putting your feet one in front of the other to go forward, but we appreciate that, and hopefully the depth of what you've gone through will affect some of the work that you come forward with now in the future. Your words about Rotary Park capture my heart. Every season I see something special in that park. It is my favorite park in all of Stony Plain. And the way you speak to people's hearts and minds is probably greater than you even anticipate, because lots of people don't have the opportunity to sit in council chambers and tell you how much you're appreciated. I can remember when the idea of Poet Laureate first came forward, those of us sitting on Cultural Roundtable thought, what is Chantal Laberge thinking? A Poet Laureate in Stony Plain? And we certainly heard that from others in the region. Why would you need a Poet Laureate? Well, how blessed is the community that has a Poet Laureate? And we certainly are blessed here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Hansard.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mrs. Mulrooney. I probably can't put it as well as Pat has, but I do know I often recount the things that we do around the community to people outside the community, and it's great to also tack on, and we had a Poet Laureate, and people are often surprised, like Councillor Hansard has said, but it does elevate the community to another level in terms of culture, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Any other comments, questions? On behalf, congratulations. And I see numerous awards that you won, so congratulations. It does take a lot of effort to compose that, and part of my brain does not work that way. So I'm glad that you are here to read those and write those for us that I can enjoy. So thank you very much, and congratulations, and I look forward to another year of your leadership in our arts department.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Would you like to, can we get a picture with you, with members of council? It's still on. Members of Council, that ends 4.2. Moving on to 4.3 is the RCMP quarterly update presentation. And today we have Inspector Wilkin. Welcome. Do you have a presentation?
And then to advance. And then to go back. Oh, 2 arrows. That'll be the easiest. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, congratulations to all of you. I think this is the first meeting that we've had since you've all been elected or re-elected. So I'm looking forward to the ongoing discussions that we do have. And just for those of you who are new, my name's Mike Lockin. I'm the detachment commander here for Parkland, and it's the equivalent of a chief of police, I guess, is the simplest way of putting it. And I've been here since 2015. First of all, in the capacity of the operations NCO, which is basically in charge of all the uniform members, and now since February of 2018 in this capacity as the officer in charge. So my presentation tonight is a little bit kind of explaining some of the things that we do, what your police service does, and obviously as time goes on, I'm very open to meeting as many times as you guys want, and through Carl, providing him with information on anything that you would like me to present on, or more information on something, even between meetings that you would like an update on something. So first of all, I'll start with the statistics that we have. So as you can see on this first page, are what we call persons crimes, and probably the main measure and the most prolific offense that we do have as far as a persons crime is an assault. And the assaults, as you can see, over the past since 2017, the past 5-year trend has been a negative, like a downturn of 33% over the last 5 years, or a 5% increase over last year. And I would suggest that a couple of things when you're looking at these statistics. The 5-year trend is typically a little more accurate than year to year, just because there are anomalies, things that happen, like for example, and I'll probably talk about theft of motor vehicles a few times during this presentation, but something like that can be so dependent on the economy, the weather, whether or not school is in or out. Trends can change as a matter of, like, all the environmental factors, as well as combined with the initiatives that we are doing. So like I said, the 5-year trend is probably a little more accurate. And something else to keep in mind with these statistics is the last couple of years, because of COVID, I think a lot of our stats are anomalies, and they are different than what we would usually see. There's downward trends and upward trends, and those are not something that we would see in a typical year, and I'll speak to those a little bit later in the presentation as well. But just in terms of persons crimes, overall assaults are down 33%, and total persons crimes are down 20% over the last 5 years. Moving to the next page, these are kind of lumped into an area called property crime. And I think that property crime is on the minds of a lot of people, and I'm sure you folks as well, because people in their communities, the one things that they often speak of in terms of concern over trends are break-and-enters, motor vehicle thefts, small thefts of items, things like that. Now, as you can see, the total property crime is down 25%, in the last 5 years, down 19% from last year. And I mean, I could break it down under each one, but I mean, you can see those yourselves. Just one comment that I have on those is that often the argument that we'll have when we present positive statistics like this are, and I know that you guys hear them too from constituents, is that people will say, well, yeah, we just don't report it anymore, and that's why crime is going down. And my argument to that is, if you look at one specific stat here, theft of motor vehicle, being down 42% over the last 5 years. We've done a number of initiatives in terms of preventing vehicle thefts, whether it be public education, the Lock It or Lose It campaign with the CPOs, and just working with the community. As I've said, police are only as good as the people they serve, and I think that we've come a long ways in theft of motor vehicles. But back to my point of people saying that they just don't report stuff to the police and that's why stats are down. You would have a very hard time convincing me that somebody, if they have their F-150 stolen, is not going to call the police to report that. So I know that we're not perfect, and I know that there is a lot of buzz on social media. Obviously, when we see those, we do take those with concern. We do look into those. Part of our job that wasn't necessarily part of our job in the past is managing public perception. And there's what used to be a rumor on Coffee Row and would spread down Coffee Row to a limited amount of people or number of people now is put on the internet and spreads to hundreds or thousands of people in a matter of minutes. And so a lot of times we'll look into those comments or those, we don't monitor them, but they are sometimes brought to our attention. We look into them because obviously if we can do better, we will. And I can say with confidence many times that we look into those, the majority of times, I would say in the 90-some%, either the comments are grossly exaggerated or simply not true. So that's basically all I'll say with in terms of property crime, but it does appear to be down according to the statistics. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but one of something that another avenue of reporting property crime is through the online reporting tool that the Rcmp has launched in Alberta. If you're not sure how to find it, just Google online reporting Rcmp Alberta, and you'll be able to find it. It's limited in the number of crimes that you can report. It's basically if it's something that's of a lower value where there's no evidentiary, nothing else for the police to do. It's still reported as a stat because those stats are important for allocating resources, guiding our patrols, having our analysts look at trends, things like that. So it's still important that people do report those to us. Then on this page, I'll just use the very bottom line. Total criminal code in the last 5 years, according to the statistics, is down 15% or down 12% from last year. Then the next page, the one interesting one that I'll talk about is the Mental Health Act. And that's the third line from the bottom. Is the 5-year trend over the last 5 years is it calls for service in the Mental Health Act are up 57%. And I'm sure that you can all imagine that COVID has played a large role in that. There are a lot of stressors involved with COVID. And we are seeing a lot of people that we haven't necessarily seen in the past. Families that it doesn't result in charges or anything like that, but the police are called sometimes to neighbor disputes or family disputes because of things that are going on. I can say, I've said this at several meetings, that in the last couple of years, people are not themselves, and we just all have to be tolerant and hope that that we're out of this situation soon. Then on this one, I don't have a lot to say other than if there are any questions. If you look under the roadside suspension and under alcohol and drugs, that's because there's a new reporting line, and that's why there are no statistics in that area at present. Then I know that this came up at another council meeting, so I'll just speak to it now in case anybody has any questions. But the very bottom line of this page, Form 10, that's when a police officer has reasonable grounds to believe that somebody is harm to themselves or others, and they issue what's called a Form 10, and they take them before a physician to be examined under the Mental Health Act. Now, I know that there are probably some questions in terms of the trends on the next few pages. Now, this one, everything with, if you look at the extreme right of the page, it says flag within norm. On this page, the only one that says issue. If you look at the numbers, it's because there's a large variance in the numbers over a period of time, and this one's theft of mail. And I can say that it has been an issue, and without going into great detail, we do have a plan, and we do have a number of different initiatives to address this, particularly in the Christmas season, because that's when we see a large, I know that last year we did, and so this year we have, we do work with Canada Post on some different initiatives. And then on this page, the issues that we see, of course, Mental Health Act and well-being checks. Again, I will say that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, that people are not themselves. We are seeing a lot of people concerned about their family members. They're not necessarily able to travel where they would be able to go and check on themselves, or because of proximity, they're just not in a position to be able to check on them, and that goes hand in hand with the Mental Health Act that we are seeing an increase. I know that there's a rural police and I never get this, an RPAC group, which is a police officer and a mental health worker that do attend calls. They're based out of Edmonton. They do have a lot of work, and I know that we are one of their biggest consumers in this area. But I was in discussions to have one of those teams based out of the new detachment, because we do have the room for it, but to do with some funding, it doesn't look like that's going to be happening anytime soon. So we do still have those teams. They're just in limited resources. Roadside suspensions, alcohol-related, no grounds to charge, the issue there. We have seen some changes in legislation, and we have seen that a lot of movement from criminal code charges for impaired driving to the new provincial sanctions, which are we're encouraged to use them because they are much more efficient in terms of not using the court systems, and the process is much faster. And so in terms of the statistics, that's the end of that, and obviously pending any questions from council. I know that there are many good news stories that happen repeatedly, but probably the main one in recent history was just a few weeks ago. There was a robbery at a local pharmacy, and the members were called to it right after it happened, and they saturated the area. They went to the other pharmacies as well, just because the 1+1 rule. If they hit one, chances are they might hit another. They actually found the person at the second place, and did arrest them. They were charged with 2 counts of armed robbery. Again, I can't go into great detail, and I can't publicly criticize any decisions that were made along the way, but that person was taken by us for a bail hearing and was released the next morning on conditions. The COVID-19 pandemic, I won't dwell on that because it seems like we've been talking about this for 2 years now. All that I'll say on that is that we have maintained our service delivery to the community, and we've always maintained our minimum complement of police officers. We've never been not able to meet the demands of the public because of it. Under the annual performance plan, something that I wanted to talk about a little bit, particularly to the new members of council, is that there is a perception sometimes by some higher levels of government that local communities don't have a lot of input into what their local police do. for them, and I want to say you absolutely do. And the way that we go about that is through our annual performance plan, and so collectively as a council, any concerns that you would have, any areas that you would want to address, if you would bring them up with Carl. Carl and I typically meet sometime in February, and we talk about the needs of the community. And this is done with all of our councils, and then we come up with a list of what the priorities for the detachment for the coming year would be, and we put those into measurables. And I can say with fair certainty that I think that our priorities for this coming year will probably be the same, if not very similar to the previous years that I've been in this chair. And because I think that these three are kind of an umbrella for everything that probably the community would want to see. Of course, there's different initiatives under each one, but those three priorities are crime reduction, which I think is the main concern of most citizens and councils. The next one is community engagement, and of course, during the pandemic, that has been a bit of a struggle, having regular meetings with the public, but that's sometimes done virtually. And then employee wellness as well. And just a few other things that the detachment has been involved in. I won't read out all of them, but one of our detachment members was with a couple local dojos, and they put on a self-defense course for women in partnership with Silent River Kung Fu and Parkland, I'll say this word wrong, Shitokan, in relation to domestic violence. There's a number of mental health initiatives and committees that the members are involved with. There were discussions with us regarding the walking trail between Stony Plain and Spruce Grove. We have the Stuff of Cruiser event coming up at the Red Apple here in Stony Plain, and then Century Crossing in Spruce Grove with the Kinsmen and Kinettes on the 11th. And that initiative takes money, food, or toys as donations. We're also involved in the Tim Hortons cookie campaign. My understanding is that they sold around 18,000 cookies for $1 a piece, and 100% of the proceeds went to the hamper program. And just the one other thing that we're doing is I talked to Kevin McGilvery. He's helping coordinate this. He and I were talking that it would be great to have this, of course, COVID rules pending. April 2nd, we do have a planning committee, April 2nd at the Heritage Pavilion. We're having a regimental ball, an Rcmp regimental ball, and I think it's been a number of years. We did have an emergency services ball a few years ago, but a true regimental ball with the Rcmp, I think it's been a long time, and it's overdue, and so it's something for the community and for the members as well to get together. And my understanding is the planning committee have a lot of really good things lined up for it, so I believe tickets are going to go on sale in January. And just lastly, again, with the new council, looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you very much for the report, Inspector Loughlin. And it's really nice to have a relationship with Rcmp where they come to chambers in a quarterly fashion to present some updates and some highlights, and the ability for council members to council to ask questions that maybe our residents have asked us. So that's really easy, and definitely appreciate the fact that that you mentioned that policing is community driven based by the reports that we hear, and working closely with our general manager of community protective services to the contacts and the files that are developed through our community peace officers as well. So that's a great collaboration between ourselves and the Rcmp. Members of council, any questions and comments? Okay, Councilor Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Inspector Loughlin, for the presentation. You mentioned the online reporting tool. We understand that tool is relatively new, but it has now had a couple of months in operation. Do you have any statistics as to how much that tool is actually being used?
I don't. I can certainly get that and pass that on to Carl, but I don't. And partly, I can't even speak to it like anecdotally, because a lot of times those things that are reported to us, they'll go into the statistics, but we won't even be aware of them, because if the work is minimal, it'll go to the callback unit in K Division that would follow up with anything. Of course, if there's any investigative process that needs to take place, that would come to the detachment. But I can look into that.
For sure, definitely. And it'd be interesting to know, because as you mentioned, crime trends in our community are only trends if we know about them. And I know we've stressed it to the community members that everything is worth reporting, because that helps us get the better picture, that helps us make sure we have the appropriate resources, that helps us make sure they're being dedicated in the proper areas. So it'd be interesting to know if that program is being utilized and how it's being utilized. So if that could be provided, that'd be great.
Just one other thing, sorry to interrupt, I know that if there is a certain type of crime that is prolific, particularly in a specific area, we are notified. For example, there was a number of catalytic converters stolen in one area, and that did go to the callback unit, but we were notified about that.
Excellent, great to hear, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councilor Astor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commander, your title is Commander?
Detachment commander, inspector,
Detachment. How do you prefer to be addressed?
Mike.
I don't think we're allowed to do that.
Inspector.
In council
Sure.
chambers.
Informal settings, just inspector.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I really appreciate the little lines before at the beginning column of each item, because that answers a lot of questions for me. Is this a problem? Is this rectifying itself? And I appreciate that visual to help me understand the numbers. One that I was curious about was on the one that has to do with, I think the print is very small, roadside suspensions. There, you had to sort of, if I understand that correctly, babysit people there on site over, am I misunderstanding that? It's under traffic, so it must be somebody was driving improperly. Could you explain that? Because it's got the sharpest spike up.
Sure.
And I believe those lines go from January of this year to October. Oh, no, it's October 7, 2017. So like a 3-year span, right?
It is January to October of each year, yes. And,
Okay.
it doesn't take into account, say, for the year 2017, it doesn't go the entire year. It goes January to October, so that over the course of 5 years, including this year, it has a more accurate depiction of whether
Okay.
things are up or down.
So if you would explain why that spike and why this wasn't worthy of being, having charges laid.
Sure, that's a change in legislation, and sometimes there's lines that are added or deleted, or types of scoring that weren't necessarily used in the past by us, and a change of direction from headquarters has come out in different reporting lines. Like I said, there has been some change in legislation of different ways to deal with impaired drivers, whether it be through drugs or alcohol, and roadside suspensions, I think, are more prolific, used more commonly now in the last couple of years than they were ever before.
Okay.
And that would be the reason for that dramatic spike, not because necessarily there's more impaired drivers on the road.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for the information today, Inspector. It's always a pleasure to see you and get a good report of what is happening in our area. One of the things that, when I was reading this, that really stood out for me is the extortion portion of it, a 300% increase. Now, I see that was in 2018, and I'm just wondering, from 2018 to 2021, I get their small numbers when you look at what comparative there, but it seems to be on the rise. Why in 18 was there a bit of a spike, and why again in 21 are we seeing that? And is that something that's a concern for you in our area at this point in time?
Well, of course, anywhere where there's a spike, it is a concern. I can say, though, that the majority of the reports for extortion are the reports that people get either online through their computer, or the telephone call scamming and its attempts to extort money from people for different things. I know I'm going to say probably in about 2018, we did a big public education campaign through going to the stores and educating their staff in terms of, because we had particularly the people that get preyed upon by these extortionists, for lack of a better term, but that's what they are. They would prey on old people, and they would have them go to the store and buy usually Apple iTunes cards, or sometimes go into the city and get Bitcoin and things like that. And they would say things like, you know, their grandson, grandchild had been held in another country and that they had to pay off their ransom by doing this, and not to tell anybody, not to involve the police, because, you know, and they would make threats and things like that. And then there's also the online component where they would contact people and say that illicit material has been found on their computer, and then the person would be embarrassed because I mean, these people are just throwing it out there on a chance that somebody does have something, you know, illicit on their computer, and that they don't want the public or their friends or their family to know. And what they've done is they've infiltrated, you know, their Facebook, their online social media, and they threaten them to say, if you don't send me X amount of money or Apple to iTunes or something like that, we will send these photos or these videos or whatever it is to every person in your friends list, including your parents and your siblings and your spouse and everything like that. So that's, it's not necessarily, I mean, it can be a local extortion, you know, local person to local person, but I would say the vast majority are those. And so if the numbers are coming up, then obviously we would look at that and see that maybe it is time again for some public education.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Inspector Loken, for being here with us. I have family that serve both in the Rcmp and the municipal police, and so we really appreciate everything that you do for our community, and so we're grateful for that. One point of clarity, and then I actually have a couple questions, but when I look at these stats being new to council, are these call-outs or are these actual charges being laid when we're looking at the numbers here?
These are call for service. These are any time that a file is opened.
Perfect, thank you.
Regardless of the result.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Had a couple of members of the community contact me since the election, actually pre-election as well, but believing that the drug issue in our community is rampant. When we look at the statistics, there's you know, certainly a downward trend in possession and trafficking, starting in 2018, which I believe is when marijuana was legalized across Canada. So I'm going to assume that maybe that has something to do with it. But his concern was specific to youth, and so I'm wondering if you can speak to some of the initiatives of the detachment or your officers in Stony Plain in terms of engaging youth around drug use.
Sure. Of course, we do, with our drug unit, try to target the worst of the worst. And if we have what's called a low-level dealer, obviously there is an advantage to dealing with those in the sense that you can use that to get to people at higher levels. With the court system, we do have a drug unit in the detachment. It's 4 members, and they do a lot of work. They get we've had some very significant drug busts in the last year. This spring we had one that was bigger, I think, than any in the history of the detachment. It was a significant amount of fentanyl and cocaine and things that are causing the most harm in our communities. And when we get that level, that does obviously affect the youth. We've seen a real shift in the mindset of society, and I think that's spilled over into the courts and the elected officials higher up who make the laws as well. And we've seen them looking at the drug issue more as a health issue than a crime per se. And so there are different ways to deal with it other than charging people, whether we agree with it or not. You know, if somebody's sent to court for some of these things, the court takes that into account, the addictions issues and things like that. In terms of initiatives with the youth specifically, and answer your question, we act mainly on information, and I keep repeating it. The communities or the police are only as good as the community they serve, and they have to work together. Whenever we do get information from the public about certain crimes and drugs, obviously we don't want our youth on drugs. They're one of the a vulnerable population. So anytime that we do get information to target drugs and youth and that activity, it is taken as a priority. I know we do have SROs who are fairly in tune with the drug issues in the schools, and I won't name the school, but there was a school year before last, at the very beginning of the year, had, I don't want to call it a significant drug issue, but it was something that was very, it was coming up at the beginning of the year, and that was addressed by us, and I think it was addressed properly with us and the school, and it did put a stop to it and kind of set the tone for the rest of the year. So obviously, yeah, we do take that seriously, but we rely on the public to work with us to make any improvements in those areas.
For sure, and thank you for that. I know you spoke to kind of your 3 pillars, and 2 of them, crime reduction and community engagement, I think go a long way when we're talking about youth and drugs and that sort of thing. And I would agree 100%, arrest, charge, release is a cycle that doesn't get anybody anywhere. And so, to see those stats go down, know that there's engagement there, I think is important. So I appreciate that. I do have one more, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. You had referred to an RPAT officer. Can you, I understand the program. What does the RPAT stand for?
I knew you were going to ask me that. It's Rural Police and Crisis Team is what it stands for, and that, I'm impressed with myself that I actually remembered that this time. But it's an Rcmp member or a police officer and a mental health worker that attend calls together. Because in certain situations, particularly when it's elevated to the point that a person's in that much distress that somebody is reaching out to have the professionals come in and deal with it, the majority of the time it's not safe to simply send a mental health worker or a social worker to those situations. And also, unfortunately, sometimes it's already elevated to the point where the police are the only option. And I totally agree that it is a mental health issue, and that in an ideal world, the police would not be involved in mental health. But when it's elevated to that point, sometimes that's the only option. So the goal of this team is they do work together, and the police officer is there to supply the safety component. The mental health worker there is there to supply the mental health expertise. And I know that they've, a lot of times when our members do attend the calls, the people that are frequent users of the system do like this RPAC team, because they will specifically ask for the RPAC team to come and deal with them. So
awesome. So that was going to be part of my question, was have we seen them active in Parkland area in terms of RPAC coming out this way? And
they've been here the whole time that I've been here. It's just in varying levels of service, because there are limited numbers, there's limited funding, and they do cover a large area. But I can say that in our area, in the Edmonton hub, that we are one of the biggest consumers of that unit. So it would only make sense to me to have a unit based out of our detachment.
Yeah, and when I look at the stats in terms of 57% increase over 5 years in terms of mental health, Form 10 going from 0 2018 to 28 this year, I certainly see a need there and appreciate your advocacy in that area. So thank you for that.
And just in terms of going from 0 to 28, I think that's probably a new reporting line, because Form 10 has been around for a long time, and I know that we've used it consistently. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you much. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Inspector Loken, for your presentation. Just to sort of follow up on one of my Councillor Anderson's questions, you had used the word a low-level dealer, and then you could use it to sort of go up the chain. Would you characterize that as like gang activity in our community?
Typically, I mean, there are, if you're asking if Stony Plain has a gang problem, I would say no. Because there are, I mean, in Alberta, in Canada, there are drugs everywhere. There's no community that's completely immune. To say that we have an issue bigger than anybody else, no. I would suggest that we're probably better than a lot of places. Of course, fentanyl is the major concern right now because it's in absolutely everything. People that are buying stuff don't know what's in it. There's fentanyl in everything, carfentanil, and it's killing people. And you know, we deal with overdoses frequently. Just last week we had an overdose death, and unfortunately, yeah, it's everywhere. The dealers that are in our area, I would say, are. I mean, there are some people that do deal with higher quantities. All drug activity is linked to organized crime.
Okay, thank you. And just another one, sort of on the separate, recently approached by a concerned citizen regarding possible prostitution. Is that captured? If that were occurring in our community, would that be captured in any of these stats?
I don't think it's in any of our statistics. It's certainly something that we can possibly, like, if it is a concern, we can look into that and pull that out of the stats. Depending on if there is a specific reporting code for that, would dictate how much work it would be to do that. Again, I'm not sure if you're asking if it is an issue, like a big problem in our area. Compared to other, especially in the city, typically that's where the prostitution people would go. Not to say they don't exist here, but yeah, the city would have a much bigger issue with it than us.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, Councillor Loynes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just curious, when we look at these statistics, are some of them like piggyback on each other, for example, where it says assault and there was 132 report cases of assault, and then sexual assault had 18? Are there's some of the sexual assault also included in the general assault statistic, or are they completely all separated and broken down?
Those are completely separate. If something is deemed to be a sexual assault, it wouldn't also be scored as an assault as well.
And that would go for the same example, the spousal abuse, it wouldn't go under the well-being checks. So somebody reported family concern, you go find out it was a well-being check is what it originally started as, turned into a spousal abuse situation.
If it's a spousal abuse, then it would be spousal abuse,
Okay.
or an assault, something like that. Well-being check would typically be just, you know, I haven't heard from my brother for a while, and he's not returning my calls, and I'm concerned about him. I want you to check on him. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none. So Inspector Wilkins, looking at the last page of your presentation where it says, kind of highlights speeding violations. I think Stony Plain has been seeing a decrease in that from 2017, where we were at 99 for the first 3 quarters, down to 12 in 2020. But in 2021, it's at 65 again. And it says within norm. Is there any predictions or data of showing and explaining why there's a huge uptake?
I wouldn't know. It would only be speculation. As far as the change in the numbers going up and down, and I would say that 2020, the low numbers there would probably be in terms of when COVID first came around, and when it was part of our daily life. There was some mindset that we should be limiting our interaction with the public, and so I think that some things were not ignored, but the enforcement in certain areas wasn't probably as strong as what it normally would be in a normal year. And I know that a lot of that is like with our local traffic unit, they're up and running and functioning. They don't fall under our umbrella per se, but they are based out of the detachment. Their statistics would not be a part of that, but that just like when there is visibility of traffic members out there, the stats typically go down as well. I don't know if that answers your question.
Sort of. But I was looking at 2018, even today's numbers of 2021, the comparison from 2018 till this year is almost, it's doubled.
Right.
Right, and we can't blame COVID on that. We can't blame a lot of things on that.
Well, and I know that in terms of like speeding violations, it has been expressed to us in the past by council and by citizens about speeding. And I know that we've had a number of initiatives around town just to address those issues. And so if you see like, I mean, we're not at the numbers that we were in 2017, but there certainly has been an increase over the last 28, 2019, and 20. Now we're at 65. I would say probably are as a result of those concerns that were raised towards us and specific enforcement in those areas.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that, because I think I've received a few calls on speeding on major arterial roads, and I've passed that forward to administration, and I think they've forwarded that on to you and your staff to kind of monitor, and even Rcmp has kind of increased their patrols in that area to hopefully to reduce that amount. Thank you. And I'm just under the same category there. I'm just looking down at the bottom where I'm looking at all the asterisks. Some you have one asterisk and others you have two. But on the very bottom row where it says actual, it shows two asterisks, and it says reported, it shows three. But there's no indication of telling me what the one asterisk is.
I think the one asterisk is actual and the two is reported. At least that's what it says on my.
Okay, because on mine it shows different, so I'm like trying to make sure that I understood the numbers.
Well, one's a quotation mark. I don't know if that's looks like an asterisk.
Is that?
It's an asterisk and then a quotation mark, and that the one asterisk is actual, basically proven to be valid, and then reported it's reported, but it's not substantiated.
Okay. Thank you. And another question, looking at mail theft. Earlier, she received quite a few calls regarding mail theft within the communities, and I find that really difficult to understand when, in 2020 there was 8, that includes all mail offenses, and 2021 is 16. But I know when I drive by a community mailbox, there's like 30 mailboxes there. So when one gets hit, only a few random ones get picked out, or does somebody have an idea of which ones have money, which ones don't? Like, it's just pick your pot. Like,
that would be, I mean, if 30 boxes get hit in one of those super mailboxes, that would be one reported incident. So it wouldn't count every single box. I mean, I think that we probably could pad our stats and put that there was 30 individual boxes that got hit, so we could open 30 different files, but we don't. But you're right. I look at these numbers, and considering the year that we had last year and knowing what happened, I think that these numbers are low compared to kind of what I expected.
Okay. And I know a few of them that were hit over the last few years were the older mailboxes from Canada Post. So I think once those were changed over, I guess more difficult to get into, and I think those numbers went down because I have not received any phone calls regarding mailboxes being hit this year so far.
Mm-hmm. Nothing in recent memory, but I can tell you, like right now, being in December, typically December is the busiest month for that type of activity, and we do have a plan in place, and we are working with Canada Post, and so hopefully we have some good success with that this year. And I guess it doesn't hurt to spread word publicly that that is a targeted enforcement initiative for the Rcmp in Stony Plain, Spruce Grove, and so if people are thinking of stealing mail, that they are being watched. So.
Okay, thank you. And that's probably good, as you mentioned, for us to spread the word that the Rcmp is aware and they're having targeted initiatives that will help prevent and reduce the number. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
Sorry, appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very, very quickly, I wrote this and forgot to ask, but when a youth or an adult, I guess, is served a Form 10 and you're taking them in for support, is Westview Health Center set up to accept them for an assessment, or are they taken into the city?
Most times they go into the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? So again, on behalf of our community, thank you very much for the work that you and the Rcmp department does in our community. I think quite a few years ago, council had the choices of funding police officers and definitely a criminal analysis and a drug unit. And that's something new that was brought back quite a few councils ago, and that was preventive medicine. As mentioned many times, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And looking at the numbers coming down is definitely showing the results of that. You know, if we have, I think we pay for a criminal analysis, which can review all the stats, all the calls, all the burglaries, and then actually pinpoint where the next one might be and catch them before it happens the next time. And also having, you mentioned the drugs, and the drug situation has gone down. We don't have a huge one, but we still have a little one, and that's because we do have a drug unit. You see a lot of reports us following a lot of people trying to sell drugs in the community, and hearing from members of our residents, a lot of the dial dopers and stuff do not operate in the town of Stony Plain anymore. They operate outside our communities because we do, and we invested those dollars into a drug unit, which is helping us prevent all that. So thank you very much for your work and keeping our community safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that ends it. Inspector Larkin, your last presentation. Do you want a picture with us? Let's go. We hardly ever have a picture with you, so let's have a picture, and then our staff can use that during those news releases that we put out every so often. Thank you. It's just a picture taken council meeting. All right. That was a good presentation from Inspector Loken. Again, members of council and members of our residents and everybody that's watching through our social media channels. Again, the biggest thing is to report everything that does happen. As mentioned by the inspector, the more data that we have, the easier it is to prevent and do their job. So it doesn't matter if it's little or small. I think the inspector mentioned a website. Again, definitely do use that. And anything that's larger, please call in and make those reports. Sometimes there's nothing that they can do about it, but at least it's a stat so that they can figure out how to patrol, how to enforce our community. Thank you. Members of council, moving on. Our agenda is number 5, business items, which is 5.1. Councillor Hansard, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that Town Council accept the Rcmp quarterly update for information.
Okay. Sounds good. Members of council, any questions, comments on that? It was a good presentation. Go ahead, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
I suppose I should have listened a little better during the inspector's presentation. The mail theft one is an interesting stat. That's sort of on the rise because of an increase in parcel deliveries, if I can kind of extrapolate that, or did I miss the?
I think it's on the rise, especially this quarter because of the holiday, people sending gifts, but it is also in partnership with the outdated technology of the community boxes that are sort of easier to get in. So once they get churned over, it's harder for break and enters, and therefore it reduces the amount. Okay. But again, I'm not too sure about the porch pirates that we hear about every so often, so that's a very good question for us to ask the inspectors. So is that included in that?
Yes, and that was what I was going to kind of make a point about is it's an interesting change, But just to share with council, as the rate of Amazon purchases and whatnot, that's a cost that regular store, brick and mortar stores, they pay for themselves. When we increase that type of business in our community, that's a cost that everybody shares to support that type of business. Not that I'm saying it's all bad, but it is an interesting perspective that one more thing that we sort of offload that business onto everybody. So I just thought I'd make that point.
Good. Thank you for the comment, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions, comments before I call the question? See, call the question, all in favor? Thank you. And that's carried. Okay, move on to number 6 and number 7, council information and council discussion. So council, anything to update members of council on or bring forward any concerns that we've heard from our residents? Councilor Laurie?
None this evening, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just an update. Councilor Laurie, Councilor Hansard, and I attended the Capital Region Parkland Water Service Commission organization meeting about a week ago. Councilor Clark from Spruce Grove was nominated our chairperson, and then I accepted the nomination there as the vice chair, I believe, I think is the title of that position. Also got a call from Ed Burney this week. He wanted to extend an invitation to council to attend the Stuff the Sleigh event at Red Apple, which is December 11th, I believe somewhere 11 to 3, 10 to 3, which is their final collection day. And so he wanted to extend that invitation to all of council. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilor Anderson. Councilor Hansard?
Your Worship, this evening I'd simply like to give a ton of credit to Public Works and all management staff that enabled our Public Works to get the job done. When we got the huge snow dump, we were just basking in a long extended fall, so when we finally got hit with the snow, I think it seemed more painful than we might find if it had just been a regular winter. An approach to winter, but the big dump of snow and then followed by freezing rain caused the Public Works staff to have to be pulled off of snow removal to now attend to all the really bad ice problems. And I think they juggled that pretty good. I managed not to take any falls, so I'm very grateful for that. But it was a tough job, and I know there were some people who were disgruntled, but it's one of those things where I think we need to pause and remember it's not an easy job to have to figure out what's the priority, and I think that the town did a reasonably good job trying to figure out what needed, how many people, where and when, in order to facilitate opening up Main Street and other business areas, as well as keeping the roads drivable. I was in several neighborhoods in Edmonton during that time, and I promise you they were far more dangerous to navigate because no sand had been put down, hardly any snow removal, lots of ice, and I personally saw 2 people fall and get hurt pretty badly. So I'm very grateful for the work that was done by Public Works, and I just wanted to be public about that. Other than that, I have no other items that I wanted to report on.
Thank you, Councilor Hansard. Councilor Loynes?
No, nothing to add, Your Worship.
Okay. Councilor Fletchko?
Nothing to say.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you. So in this past week, I've started to see, the news of the most recent variant of the COVID. I'm just curious if administration is invited to participate in any Alberta Healthcare some meetings in regards to that.
Thank you. Any update from Alberta Health Services?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Meyer, certainly bi-weekly we have the opportunity to get an update from Dr. Hinshaw, And on the off week, there's also Alberta Health Services does an information session with respect to the local Edmonton area related to COVID and just what's happening in our localized area.
And for clarification, do we get to participate in those discussions, or is it more just information down from above?
Generally speaking, it's more information sharing. We do have the opportunity to put questions into a form, and if there's time, they'll answer. If not, they collect those questions and try to get back to us within a timely manner.
Well, I would encourage administration during those opportunities. We had some very interesting stats this evening where we're starting to see the net effect of the restrictions on the citizens. And as I mentioned, this most recent variant is once again top of mind in the news. And I would encourage administration to possibly pass along some of these statistics so that we maybe have another perspective presented at those meetings.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Okay. And I'll end off, just want to just highlight and thank the members of our business community that participated in the Christmas light up, the winter light up. Again, it was on December 1st. Again, we were asked people to come downtown, kind of stay separate. There was a virtual light up that was done and started by our staff. But it's also, if you were at the Christmas tree around this 6:30-ish time, there was actually a countdown, as the residents have gotten used to the countdown. So all those that came down to shop and participate between 6 and 9 p.m., they did their own little countdown, and the tree did light. So it's kind of interesting that you can watch it virtually, and then also they did their little own countdown. So I definitely appreciate the businesses that participated and supported the initiative to light up the downtown. As it's mentioned by our poet laureate, if you have not yet been down to the Rotary Park, please do. Our staff have done an absolutely amazing job on that. We've had an opportunity a couple times to walk in the evenings, and it's well lit. And again, it is beginning to look a lot like Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. And the skating little area there, I've noticed, has been cleared off, and I think at least 1 or 2 coats of water has been put on there because there's a nice little sheen on there. So hopefully maybe by the end of this week, if weather stays cool, we might be skating there. Another thing is just to add on to what Councillor Anderson said about the Stuff the Sleigh on December 11th at the Red Apple. Again, all proceeds, we can actually send it, and you can donate toys, money, food, etc. to the Kinsmen. But at that exact store at the Red Apple on December 11th, whatever you purchase there, 10% of the proceeds go to the Kinsmen. So if you're looking and thinking about making a donation or buying a toy, please have that in your mind. And if you go on December 11th, that's a double win for the Kinsmen. They'll get 10% of the sales, and they also get the toy and donation as well. Okay. With that, that's all I had. So again, thank you very much, members of council, for coming and reading your packages and asking questions. Administration, thank you for working with our presenters to make sure that they were prepared for the presentations, and we thank you. With that, the meeting is adjourned.